Hey guys, HBO released a really cool new photo yesterday from Game of Thrones Season 7, and Drogon looks huge. How much bigger is he than the last time we saw him? And how big is he compared to the biggest dragon ever, Balerion the Black Dread? Short answers, Drogon's about 25% bigger than the last time we saw him in Season 6, and Balerion grew to be about 4.5 times bigger than the Drogon that we see in that Season 7 promo pic. Balerion takes the word huge to an entirely new level. Here's how I came up with this. I found a shot from Season 6 that is pretty similar to the new photo. At this point, Tyrion could just about stand inside Drogon's mouth if he felt so inclined. If we go back to the new photo, let's extrapolate a full-size Dany and move her over to his mouth. If we layer in Tyrion from the Season 6 picture and proportion the Season 6 Drogon accordingly, we can see that he has grown, so the question is by how much? The great thing is, these two photographs are very similar, so we can use Dany as a double check. Check it out. We'll swing the old photo on top of the new one, and you can see that Dany is the same size in both. And in order to get the Season 6 Drogon to sync up with the new promo photo, we have to increase him by 27%. This growth is faster than I would have expected, but then again, we don't know how much time has passed, and also, all three dragons have been growing faster than many of us have expected throughout the entire series. I'll save that theory for another video. It might be related to magic. These dragons, after all, seem to be part of a prophecy. The gods may have a hand in what's going on here. Let's keep going now. Let's compare Drogon to Balerion at the time of the Field of Fire. George R.R. Martin has stated that this artwork from the World of Ice and Fire fairly represents Balerion at this point in his life. Just like we did with Dany and Tyrion, let's move Aegon out in front of Balerion's mouth to give you a better feel of just how big he is. And I'll scale up Aegon a teeny bit since Balerion is a huge dragon and we're sort of pulling Aegon closer to the camera, so to say. We don't know exactly how tall Aegon was, but he's been described as tall. So let's take that into consideration and bring in Dany and Drogon. As you can see, Balerion is much bigger. He's around 2.5 times the size of Drogon. But keep in mind, this was Balerion at around 124 years old. He lived to be about 220 years old, and dragons never stop growing, so I imagine that he got a lot bigger than this, especially if the rumors are true. Supposedly, Balerion could swallow oryx whole, and even mammoths whole. In order to do that, he'd have to be a lot bigger than this, so let's figure this out. This is pure conjecture, but let's pretend that dragons continue to grow at a constant rate. If so, we need to scale up Balerion 77% to reach its final size around 96 years later. This is starting to look crazy, right? Can Balerion have really been that big? Well, let's bring in a mammoth and see if it syncs up with the lore of Balerion being able to swallow them whole. So here's a still shot from the battle at the wall. We know that some of the tallest giants were up to 14 feet or 4.27 meters. The mammoth is 35% taller than the giant, so if we assume that he was a 14-footer, like One, then the mammoth is 19 feet or 5.79 meters tall. Alright, now let's throw this sucker into our working file. It syncs up pretty well with the mammoth swallowing rumor. So to give you perspective, the new Drogon would have to be about 4.5 times as big to match the 220-year-old Balerion the Black Dread. But this is almost a tease, right? Let's see some numbers. Let's compare these beauties to the things we know, like a blue whale and a 747 jumbo jet. In order to do this, though, we need to first wrap our arms around the anatomy of a dragon. A dragon's neck and head together are about the same size as its body. In these photos, Drogon's neck and head appear shorter than his body, but keep in mind, Drogon was looking down in a similar position to this one, where he's attacking the slaver ships in Marine. And let me just give a quick thank you to the writers. The way they have the tail rise and fall in sync with the flapping wings, beautiful. And instead of attacking in large, swooping passes like we normally see dragons do in every other story, the writers had Drogon hover over the ships as they burn them to pieces. I love the CG. You could almost feel the power of every flap of his wings. Alright, getting back on track. When dragons have their heads extended, we can see that the head and neck are about the same size as the body, and the head is about a third of that length. Their tails are roughly the same size as their wings, maybe a little shorter, but they're in the same ballpark. And in this one, you can see here that their tails are about 3 times the length of their neck or their body. So each wing is a little more than 3 times the length of the body, and we need to layer in the width of their shoulders as well. So a good estimate for the total wingspan is about 7 times the length of the body. One more ratio before we start layering in some numbers. When a dragon has its mouth open, it sort of forms an equilateral triangle. We already determined that Dany fits inside the new Drogon's mouth, so let's estimate that Drogon's mouth can open to about 7 feet right now, or 2.13 meters from top to bottom, which mirrors the length of both his head and his jaw. His neck is about twice the length of his head, so I'm estimating that his head and neck combined are 21 feet. Same with his body, 6.4 meters for my friends across the pond. 105 feet from head to tail, That's a third of a football field, or 32 meters, and a 147-foot wingspan, basically half a football field, or 44.8 meters. That's a pretty big boy, but look how tiny he looks compared to Balerion at the Field of Fire. 126 years old. This Balerion would maul Drogon. Now let's look at Balerion 96 years later, at 220 years old. 7 save us all, he's gigantic, about 4.5 times the size of Drogon. Let's bring in the Mother of Dragons for some perspective. Time to shrink you, Khaleesi. Pew! Alright, so don't get me wrong, Balerion makes Drogon look small, but Drogon's huge. Even if we bring back the mammoth, look how big Drogon is from this aerial view. Even a blue whale looks tiny compared to him. Blue whales are 80 feet long, which is barely half of Drogon's wingspan right now, 147 feet or 44.8 meters. A 747's wingspan would barely be half of Balerion's wingspan when he burned 4,000 men at the Field of Fire. And at the time of his death, when he could swallow mammoths whole, Balerion's wingspan was greater than military destroyers, clocking in at 662 feet, over 2 football fields or 202 meters. There's a saying that his shadow would swallow up entire towns, and now it makes sense. If this is right, he was way bigger than I ever realized until today. But let's consider this a first draft. If anyone sees any flaws or ways to improve this analysis, let me know and we can work on a better estimate for all 3 of them. Drogon in the promo pick, Balerion at the Field of Fire, and Balerion at 220 years old. Once we get comfortable with their sizes, we can then compare the Song of Ice and Fire Game of Thrones dragons to other famous dragons if you guys want. But for now, let's call it a wrap. I look forward to hearing from y'all, and thank you as always to Team Bridge 4 for keeping this channel going. I'll check in with you guys tomorrow to figure out which topic you guys voted for, and we'll work on that. But for now, that's it. This is Kev. Have a good day, guys.